My mission is simple, to make you money. I'm here to level the playing field for all investors. There's always a bull market somewhere, and I promise to help you find it. Mad Money starts now. Hey, I'm Cramer. Welcome to Mad Money. Welcome to Cramerica. Other people want to make friends. I'm just trying to make you some money. My job, it's not just to entertain, but to educate and put it all in context. Call me, 1-800-743-CBC, or tweet me at Jim Cramer. Look, does it matter that the President of the United States doesn't seem to care one bit about the stock market? On a day where the S&P 500 hit a new record, up 0.42%, while the Dow advanced 57 points and the Nasdaq jumped 1.03%, I think it's worth considering how the Biden market differs from the Trump market. A year and a half ago, Wall Street was in heaven. We had incredibly low unemployment with no inflation. We had terrific earnings, too, until the pandemic hit. We bungled the response, and then the market got shelled. Throughout that period, though, one thing never changed. We had a president who graded himself based on the performance of the averages. When the Dow surged after the March bottom last year, shortest bear market in history, by the way, well, Trump cheered at every milestone on Twitter and in his little interchanges with reporters. To him, it meant he was doing really well. He even picked Larry Kudlow, my former Kudlow and Cramer co-anchor, as his chief economic advisor, which tells you a lot about him. Speaking as someone who served as a judge on The Apprentice for several years, I got some insight here. While Trump never followed individual stocks that closely, he knew the market mattered, and he delighted in asking me questions about what to buy. I always told him to buy Verizon. Hard to get hurt on that one. As for Trump's chief economic advisor, I worked with Larry Kudlow for 3.5 years. Larry never met a tax cut he didn't like. When we were on Kudlow and Cramer together, I pushed night after night for a dividend tax cut, something that would encourage people to own stocks. Buy! Larry pushed for a capital gains tax cut because he's hardcore. He's a hardcore believer in Reaganomics, worked in the Reagan administration. Ultimately, President Bush passed both of these tax cuts. Although, given how the Bush economy ended up, I'm a little ambivalent about taking credit. The point is, under Trump, we had a president and a chief economic advisor who were enthralled with the stock market. They wanted it to go higher to almost an obsessive degree. All right, now how about the new administration? I don't think President Biden pays much attention to the market at all. Now, I've known him for years. I'd often see him on the train going south when he hopped on at Wilmington, going to the Capitol. Biden is one of the most convivial souls I've ever met. One time back when he was a senator, he saw me walk by him and stopped me to talk about the stock market. First, he introduced me to the conductor because he was right there. He just asked the conductor to play a game of golf with him. Then Biden got right down to it. He said that he found my obsession compelling, but sadly, he couldn't take advantage of it, in part because he didn't have the money to be in the stock market. I told him, look, I understand that was difficult, plus there were potential conflicts as a senator, but that it was never too late to buy an index fund. He said he'd take my advice, but from the disclosure forms, he knew he was the poorest person in the Senate. Number 100, the bottom. I remember saying that's too bad. Biden seemed to care at all. So let's see. The last president was obsessed with the stock market. The new one could care less. The last one bragged about how rich he was. The new one brags about being the poorest guy in the Senate. The last one reveled in being a real estate mogul. The new one proudly points out that he's a union man. Those are some big differences. Yet it hasn't mattered one bit. And yet we go over it constantly. How is it possible that it means nothing? All right, well, let's pull this apart, or unpack, as they say, and then double-click it. They say this stupid stuff on all the conference calls I listen to. If we unpack this thing, here's what we get. I need you to come to grips with why it hasn't mattered. Well, we had an incredible rally when Trump took over. We had another incredible rally when Biden took over. Rally, rally. First, you could argue that this stuff is just branding. The presidency is important. But with Congress paralyzed by partisan rancor, there's not a lot of the White House can do in either direction. When there's divided government, it's tough to pass anything unless the crisis becomes so palpable that both parties are willing to compromise, like we saw with the bailout a year ago. We like divided government. It means nothing gets done. It's good for stocks. Right now, we keep hearing about Biden's infrastructure plan / jobs program and the possibility that it'll raise the corporate tax to pay for it. Given how tight things are in the Senate, I think there's a really good chance we won't get a tax hike. Then again, the Democrats were able to pass a $2 trillion stimulus package on a party line vote, so maybe Washington's a little less paralyzed than we imagine. Of course, if Biden can effectively double the tax rate on capital gains and dividends by classifying them as ordinary income, which is what I thought he might do, well, that's a different story. But it's not there. That would hurt the stock market. It's not even on the table. Second, no matter how pro-stock market Trump was, his endless tormenting of Fed Chief Jay Powell made a lot of business leaders nervous because the Fed's supposed to be an independent agency. The idea is pretty simple. If politicians can control monetary policy, they'll almost never raise interest rates because it's political suicide. When the president's out there tweeting, who is our biggest enemy, Fed Chairman Powell or Chinese President Xi? Well, that doesn't make me want to buy stocks. Worse, even though Trump's the one who made Powell the chairman, he quickly started bashing him as, quote, a powerful golfer who can't score, someone who was too conservative, too hawkish on inflation. Then last year, when Powell grasped the full extent of the crisis before anyone else did, he was well ahead of the president in trying to save the economy. But there were no supportive tweets from the Oval Office. Meanwhile, Biden says he hasn't talked to Jay Powell once since he's been sworn in. Doesn't plan on talking to him either, because he wants to maintain the historic separation between the presidency and the Fed. Okay, absurd in its own way, but at least a little predictable. Finally, third, Trump's erratic behavior toward towards individual business people and his disrespect for science collided with nearly every CEO I know. That was less of a problem before the pandemic, but it became much harder to ignore once COVID hit. As for Biden, most CEOs don't want higher taxes, but they also don't want a president who berates them on Twitter. And they don't want the government to ignore climate change. I know. Look, as many executives told me after the camera stops about climate change, they say, look, I got children. I can't take his position. I got children. I can't take his position. In the end, you could make the case that this whole discussion is moot. What really matters is that we've got low interest rates and high liquidity. I come back and say, don't kid yourself. In terms of the market, I think the president is largely irrelevant, though I'll take that back if Biden can pass his $2 trillion jobs program. So what does matter? Calm. The market loves calm. It loves serenity. Wall Street wants certainty. Even when most of these guys disagree with Biden, they like that there's no surprises with this guy. The bottom line, that certainty factor and that alone is enough to make people more willing to pay up for stocks, even when the new president's a union man who clearly favors labor over capital and used to point out that he's the poorest guy in the Senate.
Don't miss a second of Mad Money. Follow @Jim Cramer on Twitter. Have a question? Tweet Cramer. #MadTweets. Send Jim an email to madmoney@cnbc.com or give us a call at 1-800-743-CNBC. Miss something? Head to madmoney.cnbc.com.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.